Welcome to Incredible Idaho. I'm Wayne Walker. We begin our show tonight by taking part in some rather tricky flying with helicopter pilot Jim Pope. Each winter, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game conducts big game counts to determine how well our wildlife populations have fared over the last year. This information is then used to help set hunting seasons. Our state is divided into 99 hunting units. Every year on a rotating basis, Fish and Game flies a portion of those units that are important big game habitat. Our flight will take us over Unit 22, a strip of beautiful mountainous country located between Brownlee and Hells Canyon dams, known for its large herds of deer and elk. The producer of our show, Sue Nass, rode along with pilot Jim Pope and tried her hand at counting wild animals from a helicopter. Well, welcome to the other side of the camera here, Sue, but more importantly, how'd the helicopter ride go?
I'll tell you, Wayne, it was a humbling experience. It's just incredible to see those big herds of deer and elk from the air, but I think what amazed me the most was both the skill involved in flying the helicopter and trying to get an accurate count on so many animals.
Are you ready? Yeah.
The earth drops away as we slowly pick up speed. It's a different experience than flying in a fixed-wing airplane. Surrounded by plexiglass, the Hiller helicopter gives the sensation of being suspended in midair, nothing beneath your feet, and the whole world in front of you. In the distance, Brownlee Reservoir winds through steep foothills, and immediately beneath us, power lines march up from the dam, creating a possible hazard for unsuspecting helicopters.
The Hiller helicopter works really well because the pilot sits in the middle and the observers sit on the outside, so they have the best view.
It's easy to get caught up in the view and forget why we're flying, but we're brought back to reality by pilot Jim Pope, who spots our first group of animals.
Well, if you look straight ahead there, you'll see about a couple hundred elk coming up on.
Oh, yeah.
What you usually do is first you sight when you first sight the animals, you try to get a total number while you're coming in. Okay, right here, Sue, see there?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so now it'd be your job to get a total number before they start moving.
10?
It's the easiest time to count.
I got 10. Well, that seemed pretty easy, but before I could get too confident, Jim explained the next step.
The counting the total number is really quite simple. What's difficult is more the classifying.
Oh.
So you try to classify them in different age groups. Now with these deer that we're working on right here, the antlers have already dropped, so you can't tell whether you have any bucks in there unless you look really close. So what we're doing is classifying fawns and adults.
So what do you look for? Size?
So size is your first indication, but lots of times a yearling animal will be the same size as some of your fawns at times, say a small yearling. So you have to look at several things. Normally it's a short nose on the fawn, the ears will look larger, and they'll have a darker stripe on their back than the adult. So when we get some out in the sun here, we'll have you classified.
Oh, boy. All this from the air? Our earlier confidence drains away as we take a second pass at our group of deer.
You try to pick the smaller ones out of there at first.
Okay.
Then when you think you have a small one, look at his...
Like the last one to the left one's smaller and it looks darker.
Right. Two on the rear there are both fawns.
Oh.
That's about the only fawns in there.
Wow, that's tough. You get pretty close, don't you? This area is one of the best sources in the state for long-term trend data on deer populations. It's been surveyed since 1960 and has averaged about 2,500 deer. This number escalated in the late 80s. But deer are subject to weather trends, and several years of drought, followed by a harsh winter, took its toll on the herd. Wildlife biologist Jeff Rollman has been tracking Unit 22 for the last decade.
The winter of 92-93, which most people in southern Idaho are pretty familiar with, we lost a lot of our deer. Our herds took a pretty severe drop, and And so, we've been monitoring them every year since to follow the growth. And so far, it's looking like we're recovering pretty well. We're getting up almost back to those late 80 figures.
Elk are a hardier breed and seem less susceptible to weather trends. It looks like a small army marching up the hill in endless numbers.
Now, when you come up on a group of elk this size, if they're spread out like these are, you try to get your total number count before you do any classifying.
Wow, that's a lot to count.
So you have to learn to count quickly, get it before the elk move.
I fail miserably, losing track of the sections I've already counted as they cross and blend into a larger group.
They don't seem real spooked by the helicopter.
No, they don't, unless you get right over them. There's very little movement on these elk. It doesn't bother them that much.
The next herd we spot is a bit more manageable for a rookie observer. I counted 25 on our first pass. The adult males don't lose their antlers until mid-March or early April, so the next step is to get a number on the bulls.
I see 4 bulls.
Okay. Now you have to age them, like to the size. You'll have spikes, branch antler. Most of those are spikes in there. You have 2.5-year-old.
Looks like about 3 calves, maybe.
Jim swings the helicopter around for another look. He's been flying big game counts for the Fish and Game Department for over 25 years, and his experience shows.
Calves will have a dark stripe down their back, darker than the adults, all the way to their shoulders. Short head, and they should be smaller.
The herd crests the ridgeline and splits, giving us a spectacular panorama of elk, mountain, and skyline as we pull away. Although this manner of counting wild animals seems wonderfully exotic and a bit overwhelming to the first-time observer, in reality it's actually a very methodical process.
Well, like I say, we contour 500-foot elevations and pilot. That's more or less his responsibility to keep track of the groups and make sure you don't recount. Lots of times the group animals will work uphill on you, so you have to be careful of that.
Well, there's a couple up high.
We've spotted 3 big bull elk with huge racks moving up the mountainside. The older bulls tend to hang together in what biologists call bachelor groups. They keep to the higher country, away from the cows, calves, and younger spike bulls. Jim demonstrates the amazing maneuverability of the helicopter, swinging the ship around so we can get another look at the big bulls. It's a beautiful sight, and one Jim never tires of, no matter how often he flies big game counts.
Oh, it's a living. Yeah, I hesitate to guess how many deer and elk I've looked at in my lifetime. It's a number.
See, there's one whitetail in there with a couple of mule deer.
Oh yeah, look at that tail.
Come on, gal. In you go. In you go. Door! If you still haven't had enough of elk yet, you'll love our next story. The high country of Long Valley between McCall and Cascade is not traditional wintering range for elk, and those that stay are often guilty of causing damage to private property. The solution is to move the elk, but that may not be as easy as it sounds.
So what you try and do is bait the animals into the general area and then get them specifically into the trap.
The idea is to get 8 or 9 unsuspecting elk into this enclosure and then trigger a remote control switch that swings the gate shut. In 4 attempts, Conservation Officer Larry Gendrich has already caught and moved 30 animals from this area over the hill to the South Fork of the Salmon River.
And unfortunately, what happens in a place like this, it's not a wintering area, they stick around. If they're getting any food at all, they don't go over the mountain down to their traditional wintering areas, and we get heavy snows and they're caught here.
It began several years ago with 4 or 5 elk. The landowner, Dr. Harold Noakes, started feeding the animals on his property because he and his neighbors love watching wildlife.
Well, it is. They're beautiful, and as long as we've had them around, we still enjoy them. We watch them come in every day, and we count them, and we even name some of them. Yeah, it's a joy to have them.
But when the numbers got out of hand, increasing to almost 80 animals, he called on the Idaho Department of Fish and Game for help.
Yeah, it's not a good idea to feed animals. It seems like a good thing to do. Your heart says, geez, it's a rough winter, we got to give them some food. Animals can make it very, very well on their own. This individual here started with just a few animals, 4 or 5, and in 5 years it's grown to close to 70 to 80 animals.
The elk coming cautiously into the trap site don't have the sunken angular hips that indicate an animal in distress. If it appears that wildlife in your area is starving, Larry suggests giving Fish and Game a call. A wildlife biologist will come out, take a look at the animals, and assess their condition.
If it appears that we have animals that aren't going to make it through the winter, which doesn't happen very often, but on rare occasions with a real tough winter, we have groups of animals that won't survive, and we do feed those animals.
The plodding pace begins to pick up as the lead cow approaches the fence. Back in the ranks, a few animals kick into a frolic, inspiring the rest of the herd to abandon caution and race for the free food.
Boy, I quit counting at 15. I'd say there's probably close to 30 animals headed this way.
They begin feeding on the hay furthest from the trap, jostling for position and occasionally displaying to each other in an attempt to establish who's in charge.
Displaying dominance, most definitely. The largest calf or largest cow is showing dominance over the pile of hay. That's hers. And the spikes, you saw them hooking their heads and stuff. Yeah, same thing.
A few latecomers straggle in, anxious not to be left out. Eventually, 38 cows, calves, yearlings, and spike bulls are feeding at the site.
Big bulls rarely come in. We had 3 big bulls coming in for a time, but they usually don't come into the trap. Bulls are more secretive by nature. They hang out in their own little groups. The only time you see them with the cows is during the breeding season in September. And after that, they usually break up and go their own way. We're running about 20 bulls per 100 cows. So if you figure those 3 big bulls and then the spikes we had, we're right about 17 or 18 per 100 cows with this group here.
The group begins a slow, steady migration as they feed, drifting ever closer to the entrance of the trap. Eventually, caution gives way to greed, and one of the bolder animals ventures in. She's found the mother lode. Larry watches from the truck, gripping the remote switch. Timing is everything, and patience is the key. The elk are skittish. Even the small movement of a magpie landing on a fence post sets them off. It's getting late, and the promise of a large group being caught in the trap is wearing thin. Only 2 are in the enclosure when Larry triggers the remote. And that's where they'll stay until morning. It's overcast and snowy when Larry pulls into the trap site early the next day.
I'm going to go stand by the door so they don't try and climb out.
It's a cow and a calf. The older animal has a scratch on her forehead, but otherwise they appear to be in good shape.
You see that one calf is laying down. I don't know if she's, just so mellow and unafraid that she's bedded down, or if she's so excited that her legs won't hold her up. I don't know, but I think it would be quite stressful for them. We try and minimize it, of course, by putting the boards up and stuff.
A horse trailer is backed up to a chute attached to the corral. It's a design borrowed from the livestock industry, but in this case, we're dealing with wild animals.
These are our fighting boards, we call them. They're just push boards that we use to keep ourselves from getting kicked, and protects the animals a little bit. We can push on them and push them into the chute.
3 of the biologists slip into the corral.
Let's get everybody in quick here. Let's go. All right, now, stand around the sides and don't move. Yeah, you'll need to untie it. Okay, she is not real happy to be in here. I think as soon as she sees an opening, she's going to go for it. So we may not have to move much. Okay, let's just kind of swing to the left, seeing as how they're on that side, and just move her right on in. Come on, gal. In you go, in you go. Door! That's okay.
That happened pretty quickly.
Yes. Now in calf. All right.
The crew works quickly, marking both animals with metal ear tags. This will enable biologists to keep track of elk that may return to the area.
And we're also taking blood from them to, one is for brucellosis testing and the other is for getting baseline data on the disease characteristics of the herd.
Brucellosis is a cattle disease that elk can also carry. So far in Idaho, there's never been a documented case of one of our state's elk being infected with brucellosis.
Okay, now we're ready to release her.
The gate is released and both elk trot quickly into the relative safety of the horse trailer. And so their journey begins down the road and over the snowy pass to the more forgiving territory along the South Fork of the Salmon River.
They look like they're ready to get loose. Okay. Sometimes they come right out, other times they don't. Oop, oop, oop. All right. Wow.
If you're a bird watcher, spring can be one of the most exciting times of the year. Migrating birds often pause for a rest stop in our state on their way to breeding grounds further north. Marshlands attract waterfowl, but it's the rivers that draw one of our most regal birds of prey.
I said, yeah, it's kind of nice to have a capital city that has eagles in it and not the kind that play football. Yeah, it's nice.
Richard Doss likes to ride out to Lucky Peak Dam just to watch them. He says to him the bald eagles represent freedom. You'll find them here along the Boise River all winter, but in the early spring, the numbers seem to increase.
And just judging by the number of gulls and mergansers and eagles that are here, there's definitely got to be a food source, in terms of fish here.
The fish may have been stunned or wounded by the turbines or maybe only disoriented by the fast water, but it appears they must be easy prey for the fish-eating birds gathered here.
Oh, we just caught a fish. Did you see that? This is really their feeding style. They're scavengers, and in the wintertime at least, they're real gregarious, and they steal prey from each other.
A majority of the big birds here are immature or sub-adult eagles. Their plumage is a mottled brown. They won't acquire the distinctive white head and tail until they reach maturity at 5 to 6 years of age. Greg says most of the mature eagles have already left the area to nest, some just a few miles up the river.
They're so mobile, they can go anywhere, and if you look at the numbers in the counts on a daily basis, they can be here one day and gone the next. So.
It's not just research biologists like Greg Kaltenecker who keep track of the eagles loafing along the Boise River. This security camera mounted on the corner of the Lucky Peak power plant provides a wonderful view for the staff.
Oh, it's neat. And we went out, I've gone out with my own camera and taken pictures for my own records, but that's the most I've ever seen. I've been out here for 8 years.
I don't know, I think something about birds of prey, people really think they're regal and majestic, and the bald eagle is one of the biggest ones that we have.
It's just nice to be able to come down to the river and see an American symbol. Yeah, it's real nice.
Thanks for being with us. We'll close our show tonight with another look at our nation's symbol, the bald eagle.